I'm going camping in a week, and I really wanted to bring Scythe with me, but I didn't want to bring along the legendary box, that gigantic thing with all the goodies that I've upgraded. I didn't want, tree sap or stuff like that to be all over those things. I wanted to have an edition that I didn't have to worry too much about. So there was a posting on Board Game Geek by Hobie Chow. Hobie, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And he's a great contributor. Just thank you for Santa Claus. Thank you for Peter Cottontail. Those are awesome. But I wanted a travel-sized edition, and he inspired me because he did his. His board's a little bit bigger than mine, but I had a few goals in mind. First, I wanted to spend no money. I wanted this to be free or really inexpensive. I've spent a lot of money on Scythe already as it is, and I had lots of spare parts floating around, so I wanted to try to keep this one really cheap. I wanted it to not only have the solitaire deck in there, but I also wanted enough for 3 to 4 players, and just in case I encourage some people who were camping with me to play, I wanted them to be able to do so. And I wanted to fit everything into, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes over here. I wanted to fit everything into one of the boxes that came with the legendary box. I don't use all 3. I use the expansion boxes plus 2 of them. So I had a spare box just floating around. So I wanted to make good use of it. And finally, I wanted to keep a level head. I wanted to remember that this edition if I play with this thing 10 times, I'll be amazed. It was just a fun hobby craft kind of thing. But I didn't want to obsess over the minor details. So on that note, here's the normal sized board, legendary box. There's those little boxes there that we get, and just so you can see, I've got everything in there. Mission accomplished. I've even got room to spare. I might even get a 5th player in there. I've been kicking that idea around, but I think the board is so small that it might not be wise to do so. So I'm going to set this up and I'll come right back. Okay, so here it is all set up. This is everything I'm able to get into that tiny Scythe box. So the board itself is 3 separate boards, and the along with the faction cards, these are all made out of cardboard. I have little heart-shaped tokens as the encounter markers, so they're easier to see. But the player mats and the cubes, they're magnets, so you can kind of see the action pawn there, how it moves back and forth. Out of someone's suggestion on the Facebook group, they said try using magnets, because I had put it together with cardboard, like 2 sheets of cardboard, glued together with an indent, like the normal boards. But this made for a thinner solution, and then just these are just leftover cubes from a pandemic, I think, with little magnets that I cut out. The magnets, it works to a degree. It works just about as good as the double layered cardboard. It was $10 for 1 sheet, and it works out pretty good. I have used the magnet sheath as well for the power meter and the star tracker, as well as the popularity track. And as you can see, I've kind of used a little bit of Photoshop to kind of make this piece smaller, as well as the power tracker. But other than that, used some little know-how from the shop and a little bit of spare wood. Painting these things was embarrassingly difficult. Should not have been as hard as it was, but I wanted to bring a a little bit of feel of Scythe back to the player mats somehow, since I reused all sorts of different things like glass beads for the mechs, which turned out pretty good actually. And you can see like the spaces are big enough to allow for all sorts of things to happen in the hex. The heroes for each of the factions are just Colt Express minis that I had left over because I replaced those with actual miniatures. The action pawns were just left over from an old board game called Hugger Mugger that I had just hanging around. And then of course we've got the original wooden tokens for the materials and such, and the cardboard coins. And then through a suggestion from a friend of mine, he said for the, like, there's no dice in Scythe, but to use these for when you're having a battle with someone to note, you know, how much power you're using. Like if you're going to commit, say you're going to commit six strength to the fight, you just kind of do this with it, right? That way, because the power dials were pretty big and obnoxious when it came to getting them in here, but now I've got plenty of space. I might consider putting them back in, but I'm kind of, part of what I wanted to do this, to make this board for, was so I wouldn't have to worry about bringing it outside and it getting ruined. So I think I'll leave the power dials in the big box and just use these leftover 10-siders. It works just as fine, just as well. And then these are all the cards I can fit in there. I can fit all the encounter cards, all the, individual achievements. And then there's the Otama deck back there. But yeah, it all fits in there. Looking forward to using it. For those wondering the kind of scale we're talking about for this, let's just show you how big that is in closing as compared to the regular board. So this is one flap of the board here somewhere. Let's see, where's one flap? Here's one flap of the board right here. And that's how big my board is. Pretty tiny. Well, thanks for watching. I'm glad you have been enjoying this process.